Our webinar tonight is on hurricane preparedness and response. This is a really important topic. We're very grateful that you've joined us to learn more about this topic. I'm so pleased to introduce you to two of my most valued, treasured colleagues here at Tulane. And so I'm going to let Meredith and Donald introduce themselves to you, and I'll join you again at the Q&A section, and I'll moderate your questions.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us and welcome to Tulane. I'm Meredith Beers. I'm one of the Associate Directors of Emergency Preparedness and Response at Tulane. I have been a member of this office for 8.5 years, but I have been a member of the Tulane community for just over 20 years as a former student and then as an alum. So I have lots of experience with hurricanes from many points of view at this institution. Donald?
Thank you, Meredith. As Meredith stated, good evening, everybody. My name is Donald Veals. I'm the other Associate Director with Emergency Preparedness and Response. I have a background in emergency management from the university standpoint, healthcare, and I'm also a Marine veteran as well. Spent 8 years in the Marines. So one of my cool jobs I did was a Marine security guard. Some of the embassies I served was Managua, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and also Stockholm, Sweden. So I have a lot of emergency management experience even before emergency management was even a thing. And I'm glad to be here at Tulane University to serve our Tulane community and our students and family. Next slide, Penny. So what does our department do? Our department ensures that Tulane is prepared for any type of emergency that may happen on Tulane's campus. If you think about a wedding planner or even a event planner, we're the party planners for emergencies here on Tulane's campus. One of the cool parts about our job, we think about things that could happen and we create plans for them. So our number one goal while we're on Tulane campus is safety. Next slide, Penny. So we look at things from all hazards approach. One resource that we utilize for one incident, we use for others as well. But some of the things that we plan and prepare for is active shooter, boil water advisories, fire biochemical spill, hurricanes, which is today's topic, pandemics, power outages, severe weather, and much more. The and much more things like our large events on campus, homecoming, football games, commencement, crawfest, any large event that may happen on campus, our department is definitely involved in it. And then to the right-hand side, I want you all to notice the TU alert. That's something I'm going to talk about later, but this is a message that your students will receive in case there's any type of emergency that may happen on campus. This is what our TU alerts look like. Next slide, Penny. Next one. So how do we communicate? Number one, email. So for family, definitely utilize the QR codes. Our students love QR codes, but definitely you can sign up to receive emails for certain emergencies, not for every emergency. This is something that either our student affairs or our university communications department will send out to parents. Your students, if there's any emergency that may happen on campus, your students will receive those alerts. Once again, you all will not receive all the alerts that your students will receive. The center QR code is for our emergency website. That is for all emergencies that may happen on campus, especially long-term emergencies. If you go to that page right now, it's just going to show that Tulane is operating under normal conditions. For like Hurricane Ida, also during COVID, that web page had a lot of information on it that was updated daily. So once again, emergency.tulane.edu is our emergency web page. And once again, it's only really used during long-term emergencies. And also Tulane Today. Tulane Today is very cool. It's basically what's going on around the Tulane community. So I think it's something good to opt into, just to receive those good updates of what's happening around the Tulane community. Also follow the Tulane University social media site at Tulane Emergency at Tulane U, and also follow ours at Tulane Emergency. So Facebook and Instagram. My student workers like to say Facebook is for parents and Instagram is for parents. But hey, you guys follow whichever one you want. Follow them all. Next slide, Penny. So email is the primary way the university will send out any communication to your students. Okay. So if your student says, oh, I didn't get that, they didn't check their email. Once again, they need to check their emails regularly. Just remind them that's something that we're going to remind them of as well. Their email, um, their email is going to be the primary way we send out any alerts. Once again, we have that emergency website, emergency.tulane.edu. And then we have our mass notification system, which is Everbridge. That's how we're going to send out those TU alerts. So if your student is ever wondering who sends out those alerts, you're looking at the two who sends it out right here. So with Everbridge, we could text your student, email. They could also utilize the Everbridge app as well. I'm going to talk about that on the next slide. But once again, your students are already opt in, so they don't have to do anything with text messages or email, but just make sure that their contact information is updated. And I'll show you how to do that in the next couple of slides. Next slide, Penny. Students that stay on campus, housing has their own listserv on how they can communicate with students. So once again, if anything needs to be sent out, the Housing Residence Life will send out messages to our on-campus students. Once again, at Tulane Emergency. And whenever we send out any communication, just make sure the student follow those instructions that are given through those communication lines. So once again, anything that we put out is going to be on our emergency website page. And also just ensure the student pays attention, follow the directions that's listed in that communication. Next slide. So this is Gibson. This is the portal for everything as a Tulane student. So where that green arrow is, update address, phone, and email. Make sure your student telephone number is in there. Make sure it is listed as their mobile number. I doubt any of our students have a landline, so just make sure their mobile number is in there. If they get a new one, have them go in there and update it. Make sure they don't put your telephone number in there because if there's an emergency, I don't want to send an Everbridge alert to you. I want to send it to the student. So once again, make sure the student telephone number is updated in Gibson. Next slide. So the Everbridge app. Your students can download the Everbridge app from the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store as well. One thing about Everbridge, they cannot log in not until the first week of move-in. As of right now, we still have our summer students in our system. A week before or during the week of move-in, all of our additional fall students will be added to our listserv. This is something that our faculty use all the time, our staff use all the time, and also our students. The one thing cool about the Everbridge app are these three resources. Number one, safe corridor. So if they don't want a police officer holding their hand as they're walking from the library back to their residence hall, they could do a virtual escort. So if they go to safe corridor, set their timer for 10 minutes, start their timer, as they're walking to their destination, it's going to remind them every so often, do you need more time? Do you need more time? Once they arrive at their destination, they're going to stop the app. That's going to let the app know that, hey, they made it to their destination safely. If they do not stop the app, it's going to go into alert mode. Or if they start talking to a friend and forget about the app, it's going to go into alert mode. And when alert mode goes off, it's going to notify a lot of people. Starting off with our AVP of Public Safety, the Chief and Assistant Chief of Tulane Police Department, the supervisors on duty, Uptown Downtown Primate Center, the command staff, Uptown Downtown Primate Center, our Emergency Communications Center, and both Meredith and myself to let us know that a alert has gone off. It's going to show the student's name, telephone number, and their GPS location. So if they're at their residence hall, guess what? We can see that they're at their residence hall. And what's going to happen once we receive that alert, our emergency communication center is going to contact the student. So make sure they answer the phone. So we're going to talk to your incoming students as well the week of move-in. And I will remind them as well, answer the phone because Tulane's protocol is this. They want to make contact with the person just to make sure that they're safe. And what I mean by make contact, they want to put eyes on the person. The student is not going to be in trouble. We just want to make sure that the student is safe. And then we have the orange button, which is our emergency call button. That is Tulane University Police Department number programmed in the app. But your students can also program the number into their cell phones. So once they receive their splash card, right on the back of the splash card, there's all of our emergency contact numbers right on the back of the splash card. But once again, I would have them add it. And once again, I remind them as well to add it to their contact list in their phone numbers, in their phone book. You're never too cool to have the police department number in your phone. Have it, I have it as well. And then we have that last feature, safe corridors, big and red for a reason. That basically means I need help now. Think about it as a panic button. So if you do press that button, it's going to give you 10 seconds to decide whether I need it or not. If it is activated, it's going to notify the same people, but there's one fun feature that comes on. Their front facing camera will come on. So wherever they're at, we'll be able to see and hear what's going on around them. So just in case something does happen, matter of fact, we had two students that was walking to the library one day, and as they were walking in, the alert went off, and I actually seen the student what they were wearing as well. But the student decided not to answer the phone as Tulane Police Department was talking. I mean, as Tulane Police was calling. So I gave Tulane Police Department their description. They went into the library, and guess what? They found the two young ladies, made contact with them just to ensure that they are safe. So once again, download the Everbridge app. They'll be able to receive push notifications and utilize these resources as well. Next slide. During move-in, definitely opt into our Everbridge alert for move-in. So this is where we're going to send out any communications dealing with move-in. So if there's a lightning delay or if there's any incident that may happen that may interrupt the move-in process, we're going to send that alert to you. Once move-in is over, don't worry, we're going to pull you out and delete this text alert, okay? So you're only going to receive alerts during move-in. After move-in, everyone will be opt out. But definitely opt into this line, because once again, if there's anything that may happen, we're going to send that alert out to our students and also to our move-in opt-in code as well. Next slide. Okay, I'll pass to my counterpart, Meredith.
All right. So, next slide, Penny. Let's talk hurricanes. It is hurricane season. We've been in it for about a week now, and it goes through the end of November. This means that this is the time period where in our area we could see hurricanes develop. We could be hit by a hurricane, or we could be really lucky and not have any come our way, but 'tis the season. If a storm forms in the Atlantic Ocean, we are thrilled. That gives us a week plus notice to figure out how are we going to respond, where is it going, and to implement our plans. We love these storms. As emergency managers, to have over a week to plan for an emergency is amazing. Storms that form in the Gulf or in the Caribbean, they give us a lot less time. We're really thrilled if we get 4 days to plan and implement all of our plans that are in place and activate those plans. With Hurricane Ida in 2021, we had 72 hours from when it officially formed until landfall. So we don't love these, but because we've planned for hurricanes for many, many years, we can activate our plans quickly. With these, regardless of where it forms, about 2.5 to 3 days before landfall, university leadership tries to make a decision on what the university is going to do, which we will cover in a few more slides. Next slide, please, Penny. So if you've never experienced a hurricane, they can do a lot of damage. There's high winds, we can have storm surge, flooding, we can lose power, which has a lot of impacts in New Orleans. Our infrastructure here is pretty old. And so if we have a power outage, that can affect the sewerage and water board, which means that we could go into boil water advisory. If it affects the sewerage plant itself, we could have sewerage backups. And so we really take hurricane planning really seriously because of not just the immediate effects of the storm, but the longer term impacts that the damage from a storm can bring. Disrupted supply chain issues can cause longer term issues for us as we try to recover from a storm. And of course, if there's a power outage, if we lose internet, that creates many problems on many levels. So all of these things are part of what we consider as we look at what are we going to do if we are going to be in a storm's path. Next slide, please. So we have three options. We're going to start with the easiest one, continue normal operations. This means that a storm is not going to affect us, that there is a storm, that if it forms in the Gulf or if it's entering the Gulf but is not coming to Louisiana, we will send something that says we've been monitoring, it's not affecting us, we are just operating as normal. That is our preferred thing for storms to go somewhere not near us. We'd rather they not form at all, but that's not how weather works. Um, our most likely option is that we will close and shelter in place. So we can house, um, through Housing and Residence Life, they have 4,996 beds on campus. Students who live on campus, when we close and shelter in place, are allowed to stay in their residence hall. When we shelter in place, we are going to give them some supplies to have in their res hall rooms, which we'll cover later, but um, they might have to do online classes for a few days. Our business operations will probably close a little bit closer to when the storm is making landfall than if we were evacuating. We would do this because we really don't expect that the impacts from the storm will be catastrophic or unmanageable. However, even if we close and shelter in place, the university will run shuttles to the New Orleans airport for students who want to evacuate. We will start running those several days, usually about 4 days before landfall, and we will continue doing that until it is no longer safe to do so. So that's about 24 to 18 hours before landfall, depending on the storm. Our last option is close and evacuate. If we're doing this, everyone must leave. All 4,996 students who live on campus, everyone who lives off campus. This means that we are expecting really significant to catastrophic impacts from the storm and that we do not think it is safe to be here. Again, we run shuttles to the airport. One thing to note is that Tulane, we can declare an evacuation that is mandatory for our students and employees, even if the city of New Orleans does not declare an evacuation. So if we evacuate, but the city does not, that's because we think that for our students, our faculty and staff, it would be safer if they were not here. So we make these decisions with a lot of thought. We go in through a lot of different impacts that could be experienced, and we really do make these with decisions with a lot of thought for what will the effects be immediately and longer term. Next slide, please. So, like I said, we consider a lot of factors. How big is the storm forecast to be at landfall? And we tend to plan for one category higher than forecast. As storms move up north through the Gulf, they can gain intensity, gain speed, and become one category higher. So if they're forecasting a category 2 storm, we plan for a major hurricane, which starts at category 3. We look at how fast is it moving. If it's going 3 miles an hour, that's a really slow moving storm. And a concern would be that it could hover over us and dump a lot of water. Whereas a storm moving at 9 or 10 miles an hour, that storm's moving. So we'd be more likely to have wind damage, but maybe not as much flood damage. We look at what is the storm surge predicted to be. Again, the storm category, which goes along with not just which involves the wind speed of the storm, but also how wide is the storm? Like, is this thing 150 miles across or is it more narrow? Because those all will have impacts on us. And then where is the storm in relation to where New Orleans is? Are we to the east of it, to the west of it? Is the eye forecast to go over it? So all of these things affect our decision-making process. Like I already mentioned, we try to make a decision about are we closing and evacuating or closing and sheltering in place 2.5 to 3 days before landfall. As Donald said once or twice, I believe, this decision will be communicated via your student's Tulane email. If you've signed up with the QR code from several slides ago for parent emails, you will also get that email. It will also be put in Tulane Today and then on the emergency website. It will also be shared on social media. So we are going to make sure that you know what that decision is and that your student knows. We will also use Everbridge to send a TU alert to all students, faculty, and staff, letting them know, check your email, a decision has been made. So if your student says, I don't know what the decision is, they have not opened their phone, they haven't checked their email because we have broadcast it pretty much every way possible except with a bullhorn. As we're thinking about what do we do, this is not Donald and Meredith advising the cabinet and the university president by ourselves. We are talking to the National Weather Service. We are talking with our paid meteorologists through a company called Perry Weather. We are looking at what the local meteorologists are saying, and we are talking to all these groups at a minimum of 2 times a day. So we are very informed on what's happening weather-wise, on shifts in the track, on expected transformations in the storm. And so there's a lot going on that behind the scenes before a decision is made. And lastly, no two hurricanes are the same. They might have similar tracks, but they can act in very different ways. So we treat each storm as a unique being and not well, this is similar to X storm from however many years ago. Next slide, please. So sheltering in place. If your student lives on campus, all of our residence halls and some other buildings like the Commons, which is where the dining hall is, the Lavin Burnick Center, which is where the food court is, several of our research facilities, these all maintain full power through our generators that we have. That does mean that they still have air conditioning, very important because August and September in New Orleans are not known for being of a mild climate. And it means that we maintain internet. Because if you've been around students, especially about 5,000 of them, when the internet goes out, there's bound to be a mutiny. It's really not pleasant for them. It's really not pleasant for the employees that stay with them during hurricanes. So a lot of thought has gone into how can we harden our campuses and make sure that they are safe, but also provide a little bit of extra amenities for our students. We do provide to all on-campus students a 3-day supply of shelf-stable food for them to take to their residence halls to have, because during the storm, there will be a period where they are not allowed to leave their residence halls. This starts a little bit before the onset of tropical storm force winds and continues until after the hurricane has passed and after our damage assessment team has gone to make sure that it is safe for us to let people wander around our campuses. So this could be, for one storm, it was about 36 hours. So we want to make sure that they do have some snacks and other things to help them ride this out. I believe the last time there was some microwave mac and cheese, there's bread and peanut butter, some apples, there's a range of things. And if your student has dietary restrictions, they just need to notify the dining manager when they go to pick these up, because they do have bags that are prepared for individuals who have a variety of dining restrictions, dietary restrictions. So that is set. I will say that as someone who does have to come to campus to shelter for hurricanes, just like Donald, I do bring my own snacks, because if I go through a hurricane without my Cheez-Its, I'm going to be angry. And Cheez-Its aren't guaranteed to be in the supply bag. So, if they do want to stay, I would encourage them to just stock up on snacks that they like. Things that we do close during hurricanes for shelter in place include the library and the Riley Center. Those are great outlets for students to go to in normal operations. But during a hurricane, we do not have the library staff come in to staff the building so students can use it as a place to go, because we want the library staff to be safe. And the Riley Center becomes a shelter for employees who are required to be on campus for hurricanes, including our police department, our facilities staff, and dining staff. So that is why the Riley Center is not available for student use. Next slide, please. If or when your student decides to move off campus, they will need to think really long and hard. Do they want to shelter in place for a hurricane? We do not have the space for them to be able to come to campus to ride out the storm. So they would need to make sure that they have bottled water. Because again, if we lose power and the Sewerage and Water Board runs into power issues, we could have a boil water advisory. They'd need to make sure they have their own non-perishable food, flashlights, batteries. We do not recommend candles because those can be a fire hazard. But all the things to get them through the storm itself and then several days after. As I mentioned earlier, New Orleans has a really old infrastructure, and so losing power, I mean, sometimes we lose power on a sunny day when it hasn't rained for a week. So it wouldn't be unusual to lose power after a hurricane when tree limbs have fallen on power lines and the like. Um, Again, boil water advisories, those are not uncommon after hurricanes. And so making sure that they have enough bottled water for themselves, any pets that they have, or service animals or emotional support animals, to get through about a week is really important. And then again, once the storm passes, that does not mean that we are reopening for people to come to campus, because we need our damage assessment teams to be able to really do a good look at all of campus to make sure that it's safe for people to come to campus, that there aren't power lines down, that there aren't tree limbs blocking sidewalks and um, thoroughfares, and that we have campus safe enough for people to come back. So that's something to consider, as if and when they move off campus, do you want them to stay during a hurricane? I will say, if I did not have to come to campus to be here to ride out the storm as part of my job, I would leave for every storm that comes our way, including tropical storms. I like electricity. I like my internet. I like my Netflix. I like not having to boil water or drink bottled water for days on end because of a boil water advisory. So that is my personal preference, but just something to think about. Next slide, Penny.
Evacuation. So what if we do have to evacuate? Make sure your students have at least at minimum 5 days worth of supplies, clothes, medication, sanitation supplies, personal hygiene supplies, and don't forget about glasses or your contact lenses. Emergency contact list. Let's talk about the emergency contact list. All of us depend on our cell phones for everything. Back in my day, I had to memorize everybody's telephone number, but there's this cool tool that I just talk about all the time. It's called the index card. On one side, put all of your personal emergency contact numbers there. On the other side, put additional ones. Laminate it, keep it with you. If you lose your phone, you drop your phone is stolen. Guess what? I know I can call up Meredith by utilizing my emergency contact index card. All right. I don't have to think about, oh, what's Meredith's number? I can't think of it. What is it? Now I have that index card and now I can make those important phone calls while being stress free. All your important documents, your passport, any insurance paperwork, any important documentation you may have, including proof of insurance, bring that with you. Your splash card, bring it with you. Also, one thing we found we could do well during COVID is work remote. Students need to bring their laptops and their books if we do have to evacuate, because one thing Tulane University does not like to do is stop classes. Hurricanes will not stop classes. So we just need to make sure that our students have their laptops and their books to be able to work remotely. Also, portable chargers. I love portable chargers. Um, I think prom day is coming up and maybe in 2 weeks. So get them the portable battery charger that have the cords built into it. Don't walk around with a portable battery charger plus the cord. Get the portable battery charger that has the cords already attached to it. It's lovely. I have one for every occasion. Saints games, Pelican games, when I go hunting, they come in handy. We also have what's called a, no, we're not sponsored, but like a small portable power generator as well, something to keep their laptops charged up, or maybe if they have a CPAP machine, this would be great for them as well when there's a power outage. Valuables. If there's any family heirlooms that your student may have, keep them at home. If you notice the first word there is Rolex, that is there for a reason. During Hurricane Ida, a student left their $25,000 Rolex in the room that was passed down from their grandfather. Leave those items at home. If they have them with them, make sure they bring those items with them. Do not leave them in their room at all. Next slide. Personal evacuation plans, I think those are already submitted, but just in case something has changed, they're live every day. You can always make adjustments to your evacuation plan. Just remember this, Tulane isn't the primary. You and your student have to come up with your plan. Your plan is plan A through Z. If plan Z falls and we're like, hey, Donald, Meredith, can you guys please bring my student? We're not going to bring them. We're just going to leave a pack of MREs and bottled water for them. I'm joking, folks. We're not going to do that. They're going to evacuate with us. And the students will go to the University of Alabama, Birmingham. It will not be pleasant. They'll be sleeping on their gymnasium floor. So just make sure your student has a plan to get back home or evacuate with family or even friends. One thing I always bring this up for every webinar. Meredith was a student here during Hurricane Katrina, and she grabbed her and a bunch of her friends. They went to Meredith's house in Texas. That's where they evacuated to. So if your student wants to evacuate with other students, if you're happy with it, I'm happy with it. If your student's going to come home, you're happy with it, I'm happy with it. The one thing we don't want, because during Hurricane Ida was the last time we evacuated post-storm, we were able to get hotels downtown Houston, and students and alum still bring up the hotel that had a lazy river in the shape of Texas. We are not doing that anymore because trying to get a hotel downtown Houston is probably impossible right now. So our evacuation site will be the University of Alabama, Birmingham. It's going to be that we're going to be there short term. So once again, I'd rather your student have a plan not to come with us, because if they come with us, it's not going to be pleasant, and we really want your student to be comfortable. Some examples of plan changes. If your student is going to fly home with relatives first and things change, the student is going to evacuate with roommates instead. Perfect. We're fine with it. Once again, if you're happy with it, we're happy with it. If you plan on picking your student up and you're like, oh man, I can't pick a student up, and instead they're going to go with a relative or another family member is going to pick them up. If you're happy with it, we're happy with it. But just remember, when it's time to evacuate, your student have to have their plan first. You guys, once again, your plan A through Z. And if all else fails, we will take care of your student. But once again, it's not going to be fun. We're going to basically run it as if it's a city shelter. All right. They're going to have the bare minimum. They may not be comfortable. They may or may not have internet. Once again, if we do have to evacuate, we want your student to be comfortable. Next slide, Penny. Meredith.
So, as Donald said, you're going to be an integral part in helping figure out what is your student's plan. What are you okay with? If your student when they were filling out their personal evacuation plan in the housing portal indicated they didn't know how to make their plan, and they needed assistance, that portal emailed our office and I replied to your student personally. And so they were given a range of options that they could think through. If they did not respond to me but went in and made an update, that's great. Several students do reply and we talk through different options. But if they don't know how to make a plan, there are ways for them to reach us either through the housing portal. They can also update their plan in Gibson. And again, if they have questions, it will alert us and one of us will write back. But you need to think about, as a family member, as your guardian of this student, do you want them to be here for a hurricane, or would you rather them evacuate? Whether we shelter in place, you can still say, my student is evacuating. That is fine. We are more than happy to help them get to the airport, because, again, we want them to be safe and we want you comfortable with the plan. The only thing we ask is if your student decides to evacuate when the university shelters in place, is that they communicate that with their professors. Let their professors know that they are heading out early, especially if that decision was made by you and your student before the university has made a decision. If it's 3 days before landfall and you don't want to wait until the next day to see what the university decides to do, that's fine. Your child and their safety is your number one priority, and we want to support that. So just communicate with professors. They will get a survey. It will come from either the housing email or from us through Everbridge. It depends on the situation. Asking, are they sheltering in place with us or are they evacuating? So we just ask that they respond to that as well, just so we can have an accurate head count of who is where. And then we do want you to think about insurance. Are your students' belongings covered under your homeowner's policy? Or do you need to get a renter's insurance policy? So that's something I that is as much advice as I can give you. I am not an insurance person than to say you should have it. So talk to your homeowner's policy rep or look at the renter's insurance that this is who the school Tulane recommends, just to make sure that their belongings are covered, particularly when they're in the residence hall, or if they get an off-campus apartment after their junior year. Next slide, please. So again, as you think about what does the evacuation plan look like? It's where's your student going to go? Are they coming home? Are they going to a relative's house? Are they going to family friend's house? We recommend that they don't go in the direction that the storm might turn. That tends to mean that they might get stuck somewhere else. And certainly not to go south of New Orleans. That's also advice that we share. We do recommend going inland and away from the storm. If they want to go with friends or roommates, that's fine with us if you're fine with it. Like Donald said, when I was an undergrad, we evacuated for two hurricanes, Hurricane Ivan in 2004 and Hurricane Katrina in 2005. And for both of them, I invited friends to evacuate with me to my parents' house in Texas. And we did that. After Hurricane Ivan, we came back after about 4 or 5 days. And after Hurricane Katrina, we came back one semester later. So after about a week at my parents' house, they invited my friends to go to the airport and fly to their own home states. Because at that point, we knew that it would be a semester before we returned to New Orleans, and my parents were not willing to host several people for 3.5 months. Think about your timing. So our timing is that we're going to try to make that announcement about sheltering in place or evacuating 2.5 to 3 days before landfall. Are you comfortable with that? Or are you going to make that decision a little bit earlier? Are you going to wait for us? I would not wait until the last minute. Think about how are they going to get out of this city? Is someone picking them up? Are they going to the airport? We have an Amtrak station here. Are they taking the train? I will note that if the city declares a mandatory evacuation, the city uses all Amtrak trains for city-assisted evacuation. So that no longer becomes an option for regular rail travel. So really the airport would be the best option after that. And then who is your student supposed to contact out of town? Is it you? Is it an aunt? Is it best friends? But make sure that that's something that you all know. So if your student for some reason isn't in contact with you, you know who the next person on that call tree is for them. And then as you're going through what your student's personal evacuation plan is with your student, if they have a service animal, an emotional support animal, a pet, which they can have once they move off campus, make sure to include those animals in your plan. They do not and should not stay behind. One student evacuated before the storm for Hurricane Ida and left her emotional support hamster in her residence hall room. And when we had to go in and perform search and rescue for her, his name was JJ. I don't know if you've ever encountered an angry hamster, but they get very angry and bite you. So I lived with that bite after rescuing the poor little rodent. And then he moved into the facilities building with all of our essential workers and kept us up all night as he ran on his hamster wheel because they're apparently nocturnal. That was not pleasant for us. It wasn't a pleasant experience for the hamster, and the student did have to face student conduct when she returned for leaving her animal behind. So make sure to include those furry creatures in planning. Next slide, please. So what can you do to help support your student and us as we have a hurricane approaching? Read all of our emergency announcements. They will be posted on the emergency website, which is on the screen. If you sign up for the parent emails, you will get them that way. They will be on the university's official social media accounts. So at Tulane U, at Tulane Emergency. But, and I cannot say this with enough emphasis, the parent Facebook page is not one of those official sources of information. There are a lot of really well-meaning parents who post on that page, and that is wonderful, but their information is not always accurate. And they might be giving advice about what to do for a hurricane based on one experience. And each storm is different. So each storm has to be approached with the information that we are providing at that time, not information from 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, because that's no longer relevant to the storm that is coming at us right then. So again, emergency.tulane.edu is a great source. The parent Facebook page, just don't even click on it. Let it be off in somewhere that you just put on ban for a few days. Watch the local news. We love WWL, Fox 8, and WDSU. You can stream all of those. Please, please, please do not watch the Weather Channel. Jim Cantori is great, but following him to see what the storm is going to do is kind of like me asking my magic 8 ball what the storm is going to do. It's entertaining, but it's also a little overkill and not realistic. Our local meteorologists at Fox 8, WDSU, WWL, they know what a storm can do in our specific area. Weather Channel and all those other big outlets, they want you watching. And so they're going to sensationalize a little, and they tend to go with worst case footage from previous storms. That is not helpful for you. We don't want to scare you. We want you to be prepared for a realistic expectations for each unique storm. So watch our local news. If you want to take bets on where Jim Cantori might go, but don't base what you and your student are going to do off of that. Again, come for our official sources of information. And then the last thing that you can do to help us and to help you is remind your student to check their Tulane email multiple times a day. As a storm is approaching, we will be sending out messages either from our office or from President Fitz at least twice a day. So that's when they need to be checking, morning and afternoon. Again, Tulane email. So their Gmail account is not the one, it's their Tulane email. Next slide, please. After a storm, all instructions are going to be sent, I'm going to sound like a broken record, via Tulane email. They will also be posted on that emergency website. It will include really specific instructions like do not come to campus. We are assessing damage. Stay tuned for when campuses will reopen. So that means just because we might have power to some of our buildings, that does not mean they are open. Our students who are sheltering in place in their res halls are not allowed to leave until we send an all clear. That will go via email and a TU alert. That is not because we want to see how long they can stay cooped up in their res halls before having cabin fever. That is for their safety and security. Students who are off campus, again, absolutely should not come to campus until after that all clear is sent. And then, like Donald mentioned, we may not be ready to have people physically on campus in our classrooms yet, but that does not mean that classes won't continue remotely via online learning. So again, they need to be prepared to do some online learning. For that, the university will send an email saying, here's when classes will resume remotely. Professors will also reach out to students, usually through Canvas, with is their learning going to be asynchronous or synchronous, and what individual class schedules might look like depending on each professor's individual course, or if the professor is out of town traveling back to New Orleans. So again, email is where we give all of those really important instructions. So next slide, please. We've covered a lot of information. And so now, Penny, if you'll go to our next slide, that tells how to contact us. But then if you have any questions that have come in, we'd be happy to answer some.
Okay. So families, now is the time for you to submit your questions if you have any. Um, Meredith and Donald have definitely given a really thorough presentation, and so they might have anticipated all your questions. But if you do have some questions, now is the time to submit them. So, so here's the first one. If Tulane does evacuate to UAB, can families in the Birmingham area pick up their student, or does the student have to stay in the UAB gym once they're there?
Pick them up,
Yeah,
come
quickly.
grab them.
Yeah. And
If you want to put them on a train from Birmingham to wherever is home, that's great. If you want them to get on a flight out of the Birmingham airport, we love that too.
right, because they want to reduce the number of students that are in that sort of temporary, uncomfortable shelter situation, and have fewer people to have to manage. And so, and again, it's just so important for you to remember that that should not be your first option. That's the last resort option. Um, so another question, and we will get these, and they're just really impossible to answer. But it's like, how often is there a shelter in place? And that, can just change from year to year. That's not something that's easy to predict. Or, somebody asked when was the last evacuation. So if you all want to, you know, give some answer to that, I invite you, Meredith and Donald, to
The
make a mention of
last
that.
Tulane evacuation was 2008 for Hurricane Gustav. We did evacuate for Hurricane Ida, but that was post storm. We evacuated after Hurricane Ida passed.
Right,
Yep. And that was a result of infrastructure issues in the city.
right,
And I mean, how many storms do we shelter in place for in a season? It really does vary. In 2020, we sheltered in place for 6 or 7 storms. Um, I think 8 to 10 entered the Gulf, and those 6 or 7 that we sheltered for were the ones that were coming to Southeast Louisiana. There were, what, 3, Donald, that went to Southwest Louisiana that we
Correct.
were monitoring, but then didn't have to shelter for. 2021, I think it was 2 storms. Last year,
Yeah, but
I don't
last year
think we had a storm.
we had a snowstorm
Yes,
last.
we had a snowstorm. We sheltered in place for a snowstorm for a week, and
Yeah,
we were closed and did remote learning for about a week.
students
Um,
had fun.
yeah, great snowmen.
unusual, record-breaking, way out of the ordinary snowstorm hit New
Yeah,
Yeah,
Orleans. That like
12 inches in one day. It
we'll
was
never see that again in our lifetimes, most likely. Um,
yeah.
so I know
So
that we've got
yeah,
people here, from other parts of the country where snow is, just routine, but it's certainly not here. So everybody just went nuts.
yeah,
Um,
it was. And that is a point to what Donald made at the beginning, that our plans are all hazard, that we took our hurricane shelter in place plan and flipped it to use for a snowstorm. So
right.
again, we had meal bags for students. We
Right. You've
used
already
it.
got the track laid. You kind of know what needs to
Yep.
be done. And so there we our teams, led by Meredith and Donald and others are just well versed in all of this. So here's a question. Just a reminder, when does hurricane season end in November? What are the
November 30th.
parameters?
30th.
Okay. So here's another question. If it's a sheltering in place situation and we're able to fly the student back home to where we are in New York, then do you recommend flying them back if we can, or them staying there on campus? So I think that is really up to the family about whether you want to have the student shelter in place or be with you. And so I think I'll let you all answer that, but it kind of comes down to what you're
It's
most comfortable with.
it's personal preference, and that could vary for you based on the size of the storm, the category of the storm. If it's a tropical storm coming our way and it's moving really fast, so it's got a really fast forward speed, you might say, yep, stay and shelter in place. But if it's a category 2 storm, you might say, no, I'd rather my student come home. So it is personal preference. And you can always email us. Our department email is emergencyprep@tulane.edu. Or you could email Donald and me to just kind of, if you have a few more questions. I will say if a hurricane is approaching, our response time does slow down a little bit because we are a little busy with some preparation stuff, but we still try to respond to all emails that we get within about 24 hours.
So we have a couple of questions that are about flights home. And so I'll answer the first one, which is, does Tulane pay for students to fly home? And the answer there is no. So this is something for your family to consider just in terms of sort of calculating expenses and having sort of some backup plans, saving for that eventuality, or sometimes family members might have other friends who have like airline points or something that they might be able to use. So that could be something you kind of investigate with, your kind of circle. Um, the other question is, how easy is it to book flights for students after the university decides that students have to evacuate? Is there any concern there?
I haven't seen any concerns, and the airport will not close until it is unsafe for the and until it's unsafe for the flights to take off safely. But I haven't seen anything. Meredith have.
No, but I'm realizing we forgot to mention earlier that if you do want your student to fly home, they need to have that airline seat booked before they go to the airport.
Yeah.
You won't be able to buy a seat at the counter.
Right.
Um, so book that in advance. But airlines want to get their fleet out of New Orleans. And because we have a really large tourism industry and conference industry, they tend to send a lot of planes in to help depopulate the city as much as possible. Um, I haven't, from the last time students left, I didn't hear anybody say that they had a hard time getting flights out.
No.
Um, let's see here. We've got several other questions and we're getting close to time, but we're going to try to cover these. So we might go a little bit past 7. Let's see. I said in the beginning that this presentation, both the video of it and the presentation slides will be archived on the family programs website. So that's families.tulane.edu, and you look under communications to the webinar archive. Um, let's see. Do students living on campus need to keep a disaster supply kit in their rooms, or is that recommendation solely for off campus, the seniors who might be living off campus?
I think they need to have one just in case. It's just always good to have your own supplies.
Um, is the Everbridge SOS function specific to the Tulane campus footprint only, or does it also notify campus law enforcement if it's activated from off campus?
It will still notify our campus law enforcement. It works worldwide. Meredith was abroad, and I said, "Hey, test out your SOS." And I think she's probably in Prague. I think it was, and it went off there. So yeah,
And Donald knew exactly where I was, like the intersection I was at, and called
Okay.
me and he said, "What are you doing there?" So
Yeah,
so
so it's
it
a
works.
very useful app for them to download once it's activated for this cohort, this school year. Um, if the student has the option to drive, for instance, they have a local friend with a car, or fly, then should they fly back home to New York or drive inland and away from the storm? So these are just options. So really you kind of have to weigh those, the feasibility from your perspective. Anything to add there?
It's your choice and your comfort level.
Yeah,
Uh, it's really personal preference,
yeah.
but it's good to have options.
right. And I think that another thing that just to reinforce something that they said earlier is that Tulane does make that call for our campus before the city might issue a mandatory evacuation. So that gives us a little bit of a head start at the airline seats and some of those kinds of things, and can kind of help us kind of be at the forefront of getting out of town if if it then turns out that they call for a mandatory evacuation. So just something to consider that I think is really useful for us being part of the Tulane community with all of these experts who are monitoring everything and communicating everything to us. The next question is, we are fairly far away. And I think that's something for you to remember, that most students at Tulane are from more than 500 miles away. So we really do want everybody to take this information to heart so you can make good plans for your family. But the question is, we're fairly far away. Is there a recommendation of when we should say fly home before the school makes a decision? For example, less than a category 3, they should plan to stay. We're just looking for recommendations for kids who have no family in the area and and we're definitely not within a driving distance away.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what Meredith stated earlier. Each storm is different. A category three in August is different from a category three in October. 'Cause I think we had Hurricane Zeta
Yeah.
on
Halloween
Halloween Day.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a hurricane. It was a category three, but it didn't do much damage at all. But
Yeah.
once it's gonna always be storm specific. Meredith?
Yeah. So like Zeta came in and the eye wall pretty much passed over New Orleans, but the back half of the storm completely fell apart. So we only got half a hurricane, which in of itself is bizarre. But it's because it was so late in the season. And so but we wound up, the uptown area and neighborhood was without power for almost a week. Um, so while it was half a hurricane, there still were pretty widespread power outages. Whereas there have been other storms that weren't moving as fast and that were in August or September that we have more significant water damage and wind damage. So it's personal preference again.
So this next question is, can you explain the evacuation plan more? This is the first we've heard of it. Are parents involved and sign off on the plan? Or what advice do you have in developing a plan so we can review it with our student? So this webinar is meant to be that advice for families so that you can connect with your student and review the plan. Now, many students may have already been prompted to submit this, but this
Mhm.
could be that prompt to you to say, hey, could we go back and log into that and show me what you've put in there? Or it might mean that your student has missed that prompt, and then you can be the nudge to help them do this. And now that you're armed with more information. And so Meredith and Donald, could you explain to the parents how this has been presented to the students?
Meredith with this one.
Sure. So when your student was signing up for housing, this was part of that process, and they could not complete the housing selection process until they submitted their personal evacuation plan. I should have pulled numbers before, but from our incoming class, I looked at numbers the second week of May, I believe. The vast majority said that they were either going to fly home or that they were getting a ride from a family member, a friend, so that a personal vehicle was evacuating them. Um, I think maybe 2%, 3% indicated they needed help creating their plan because they weren't sure where they were evacuate, don't have a personal vehicle, which as incoming students, they can't have personal cars on campus, so that's not surprising. Um, weren't sure where they would go, or permanent addresses outside the US, and so needed help with that. And so I wrote back and gave them kind of the same options that we presented to you tonight. Um, can you fly to another city where you have family, friends? Could you ride with someone to another city? So to think about what the network of people that you know are. Um, and then, of course, as a very last resort, if so I don't think we actually clarified this. If the university decides to shelter in place, we do not do any assisted evacuation except for rides to the New Orleans airport. If the university decides to evacuate, that is when, if your student has absolutely no way to implement their personal evacuation plan, will we take them to the University of Alabama at Birmingham? We don't go there if we shelter in place. So that is a distinction that I think we need to make sure you understand. Um, so if your student does not want to shelter in place and does want to evacuate, the support we will give is a ride to the New Orleans airport through our shuttles and transportation office. So that's when they would really need to think about with you, am I coming home? Am I going to visit friends? We've had students go visit friends at other universities before, um, and had a really good time. We've had people go to Las Vegas. We've had people tell us that they've gone to the beach, which again, that's going
Not a good idea.
usually more south. We really don't
Right.
recommend that. Inland, go inland. That's
But
our
I
advice.
do recommend that you think about, especially if you're very far away and maybe you're not near a major airport, then think about family members, extended family members are good, family friends who live in cities that are far enough inland and maybe at a large airport hub, because it might be easier to get them there and they stay there for a few days, and that's less expensive than flying them all the way to you, especially if you're far away from an airport or something like that. So I do think you have to think kind of divergently and think about plan Bs and Cs. And maybe you don't put your plan B into the hurricane evacuation plan that they submit, but somebody said, what do we do if there's something and then we have to pivot? So I think it's always good to have a couple of backup ideas and to be watching the airlines. And so we can't give you a prediction of exactly when, flights might book up or whatever, but that we're going to tell you there's something in the Gulf, we're monitoring it, we're starting our watch, and so then that's the time to just sort of, start investigating these different scenarios to be ready so that you can kind of you can enact your evacuation plan. And that's why we tell you, this speaks to another question. Is if your student has evacuated and classes are being held, but then they're coming back at a certain time or they're en route then, and they might miss a class that's online. I think the most important thing for a student to do is to just be really responsible in communicating with their professors. Because I think the professors also understand how this is impacting everyone. And we're all going to be trying to kind of make the best that we can if we have to work remotely, go to class remotely or whatever. And so if they have to, email a professor and say, unfortunately, because of the way I've evacuated or my return date, and how I'm managing this, I'll have to miss the class that's being, our class happening at such a time. I'll follow up with you to find out what I need to do to make up class. Students just need to be responsible, follow through, communicate. And so if they do those things, I think there's some grace given for those situations. But if they don't communicate at all and they just kind of check out and think that it's a time to take a little vacation, it is not. And so we definitely have to work with students to not approach it that way, but to think about it as it is an emergency situation, even if it turns out to be not, it veers off at the last minute and it goes in a different direction, then that is not a time to like celebrate. It's just a time to kind of be relieved and then stay on top of things to get back to campus as soon as possible. So that's the advice I would give after many, many decades of working here and going through several of these. Let's see.
Hey, one more
Yeah,
group that I would advise is you're thinking about what's your plan B, what's your plan C. For incoming students, I believe housing assignments are going to be made in about a month. Think
they
about
already
your
have
students.
they
Oh,
already have their check-in times. So
okay. But
somebody
yeah, I
could
was to say, think
respond.
about roommates.
Right.
Where is the roommate from?
Yes.
Are they local? Because there is a built-in family right here that your student could possibly evacuate with. Are they from somewhere close enough that their family's coming to drive to pick them up? Could your student go with them? So, roommate is, could be option B or C.
So one question is, does a shelter in place situation ever turn into an evacuation? So we did have a situation like that, but it was because more of the after effects of the storm hit the infrastructure that affected the electricity. And so that was a
Hurricane
situation
Ida.
we hadn't really encountered before. So, yes, that one did happen that way, but that everyone is different. The dynamics can be different. So it is really hard to say it'll happen exactly like this because these professionals have to consider all of those varying dynamics and how it will impact us and have different options for how we'll respond. And that's why we want to share these possible scenarios with you so that you can make the best decisions, that you can, but you've thought through some of those options so it doesn't catch you off guard, and catch you unawares. Um, Another question is, do you have a general idea of how many people stay versus leave during a shelter in place? And that really just kind of varies from time to time. Their parent is asking, if my child stays, is it miserable because everyone leaves, or is it sort of fun, no school days, stuck inside? But with friends, I think they can get pretty cooped up, and be tired of being in their same room. And, the reason you saw that photograph of students sort of lying on the floor in the hallway is because if the winds reach a certain speed, then the safety measure is going to be that they tell students they have to move into the hallways so that they're not in their rooms where there are big glass windows. And so there are a lot of things that they'll have to do, and they have to follow instructions. And we go into what's called a high priority period in terms of student conduct and the sanctions that could be applied if students don't follow the rules, either our regular student, code of student conduct, or any directions that are given for the emergency situation that we might be in. And so it's not a time to just kind of play, but that's why we want them to have, you know, power banks so they can charge up their devices, and they can use their computers. They can stay connected with you via the internet, charge their phones, and that kind of thing. So I hope that makes sense. Anything to add in that regard, Meredith or Donald?
I think looking back at 2020 when we sheltered in place for 6 or 7 storms, um, I remember a lot of shuttles running to the airport until Hurricane Zeta, which was the last one. Um, I think that when we had more people staying and sheltering in place on campus, though, because it was backing up to Halloween, and Halloween in New Orleans is a lot of fun. So I think people didn't want to miss Halloween, and that's why they stayed. And we had a home football game that weekend. And I remember the stadium being pretty full.
And
Um,
I think sometimes they can get emergency fatigue. They stop
yeah.
taking it as
And I mean,
seriously, which
right. I mean, we were
is a
in the cone
difficult thing.
every 10 days that year. It was exhausting. I was never so thrilled for hurricane season to end. But then with Hurricane Ida, um, just over 50% of on-campus residents did evacuate pre-storm. And we wound up evacuating about 2,000, 2,100 students
Right.
post-storm. And that was a combination of on-campus residents and off-campus. So juniors and seniors, um, graduate and professional students. So that one we had clearer numbers, but Hurricane Ida was forecast to be a larger storm than Hurricane Zeta was. So again, it was storm differences. Hurricane Ida was at the end of August, so the waters in the Gulf are a lot warmer, which can has a an effect on hurricanes of where they can get bigger and stronger faster the closer they get to land. At the end of October, the waters aren't as warm, so they don't have kind of the runway to strengthen the way that they do in August and September.
And I want to speak to this part of one parent's question is like, is it sort of fun that it's no school days, you're stuck inside? So I want to disabuse you of the thing that you might have heard from students who've already been here about this idea of a hurrication. If I could remove that word from, the lexicon, I would, because I think that it gives a false sense of this is not serious when it is. And so there may be certain storms that we prepare for, and then the impact is not the worst. But we don't want people to plan for it being not the worst. We want people to, make good plans that could be appropriate for big impacts so that they'll be safe. And so we also don't want students kind of using a evacuation or a shelter in place as a time to like party excessively, because then they won't be sharp, they won't be aware, they might make mistakes. And so we just don't want that to kind of become what happens. So we're dealing with emerging adults who might not always make the best decisions. So that's another thing for you to be monitoring and checking in on your students, and talking about ahead of time, to take these things seriously, hope that they don't end up being situations with really serious impacts. But since they could, they need to be responsible and careful. There's one other question that I see we missed. So it was, are there other transportation options for getting to places like Baton Rouge from New Orleans? Like it might be easier to catch a flight or for relatives to pick up. So I think that I don't know whether or not they could count on like buses to Baton Rouge. And
Yeah.
I think the other thing to consider is like Meredith and Donald, if you could kind of give a radius maybe that you would recommend that people try to get out of far away from New Orleans, because the storm's path could veer a little bit. It might hit Baton Rouge more than it would hit here, and we might not know that, until those last 6 hours. You all can speak to that better than I. So if you could give a little bit of context around that situation.
Yeah, I always say 500 miles north because once the hurricane make landfall, it's going to start weakening. So 500 miles north. Don't go west, don't go east. Reason being, once that storm is in the Gulf, it can go anywhere. Corpus Christi, Texas, Miami, Florida. We may have some folks from that area, but if you're trying to get away from that storm and you're driving, go north because at the last minute that storm can definitely shift. So we say just 500 miles north and away from the storm.
Right. So I know people want to say, should we expect this many shelter in place? Should we expect this many? And it's just not something we can predict for you. So we want you to know these different dynamics to take into account in your decision making and your preparation. So I think we'll close the questions at that point, and I'll just remind everybody that there are so many people on campus who work along with Meredith and Donald to prepare for these situations, to prepare for the sheltering in place situations, to work on how the communication will go out with whatever decisions are being made, and who really care about keeping your students safe. But we need your collaboration with us to help your student take that seriously and think through their plans and their backup plans. And those might change over the 4 years that they're here as they meet other people, maybe have other connections, or you think through some other scenarios, or some different things change about the possibilities for you and your family. So keep those things in mind, and you'll receive the information. All of this will be archived at families.tulane.edu under the communications tab. Look for the webinar archive, and I'll just ask if Donald or Meredith, if you have any last thoughts you want to share before we close.
Meredith?
Well, welcome to Tulane. We can't wait to meet y'all in August.
Same here. I think we're gonna have a table set up the week of moving, so definitely pass by and come have a conversation with us.
And we'll
Yes.
give you some swag.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that'll be in the Peterson lobby, which is that entry space on the street level of the Lab and Burnick Center, where the bookstore and the food court are. So there'll be more information in the family newsletters about that information fair. So thank you, everyone. We appreciate your participation tonight. And we really do value the partnership with families in helping your student get prepared for this and envision these scenarios and create their plans. So we thank you for your time and attention on this evening. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great evening.